So this is a review on adjective and adverbial clauses. From what we remember about relative pronouns and subordinating conjunctions, those are two different ways that a dependent clause may begin. Most likely, if it begins with a relative pronoun, so just as a review, those are words like who, whom, that, which, where. It would probably be an adjective clause because the clause that follows a noun that modifies a noun. So, for example, the boy who found the ticket donated the money to charity. So in italics here I have the adjective clause, who found the ticket. First, it's a clause because the subject is who, and the relative pronoun acts as both the subject and the relative pronoun of the clause, and the verb is found. Who found the ticket is modifying the boy. Therefore, it's functioning as an adjective or adjective clause. In the second example, we have the branches fell because the wind exceeded 60 miles per hour. So if we look at the definition for an adverbial clause, they usually begin with a subordinating conjunction, and they always modify a verb. So the whole clause would answer the questions why, when, how, or to what extent. In this example that I previously read, because the wind exceeded 60 miles per hour is a subordinate clause, a type of dependent clause. It begins with a subordinating conjunction, and it explains or answers the question of why the branches fell. Therefore, an example of an adverbial clause. So let's go into IXL and just take a minute for me to get to our level. And I'll show you a couple of these as they appear in our lessons. You were asked to identify relative pronouns. Move my screen here. Stretch this out. Okay. So in this example, when Lewis and Clark set off on their expedition to 1804, they were searching for a Northwest Passage. A route, and now we have to decide if it's which or that. And in this case, it would be that because there is no comma, which means that it's essential to the sentence. And when it's essential or restrictive, we use the word that rather than which. So the answer would be that would connect the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. It starts with a relative pronoun. It follows the word route. It's this clause then that would connect the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. It's modifying the word route. In this next example, with just a piece of rope and a couple of pots, you could make a hanging planter. And so now we're looking at the word planter here as it extends into the clause. So which would be an attractive addition to the bay window in your bedroom? In this case, it's which, because there's a comma, which makes this non-restrictive. Which would be an attractive addition to the bay window in your bedroom is modifying the planter, giving examples, or explaining beyond, starts with a relative pronoun. This clause is functioning as an adjective clause. So far we've been getting a lot of, these are all relative pronouns. They're all acting as adjective clauses. Let's see if we can find one that starts with an adverbial clause. So we'll go back into the language arts, level I, and I'm going to go into the practice of subordinating conjunctions to show this. I believe that this is a more advanced level, so it might not be in level I. So let's take a look at some complex sentences. we'll go to this like dependent clauses. In this case, we start with while the telephone connected 50 million people within 75 years of its inception. That's the dependent clause. The internet accomplished the same feat in only 4 years is an independent clause. So the dependent clause here starts with subordinate conjunction. It's also functioning as an adverbial clause because it's answering a question, why, or to what extent, or when. In this case, the internet accomplished the same feat in only 4 years, while the telephone connected 50 million people within 75 years of its inception. Seems to be answering the question, when or to what extent. So the answer for this one is a dependent clause. So back to our initial review here, adjectives and adverbial clauses. Just remember, the best signal word is to look at that first word of the clause. If it's a relative pronoun, most likely it's acting as an adjective clause. If it begins with a subordinate conjunction, it's most likely acting as an adverbial clause. Both adjective and adverbial clauses are considered dependent clauses. So it's just a more specific description of a dependent clause once again. And that's the end of this review.